Welcome to Risk Matters, the insurance podcast brought to you by DWF and your global guide to the latest trends and issues in the insurance and reinsurance industry. Join us as we explore topical issues, emerging technologies, and the innovative strategies that are shaping the global future of insurance.
Moving to detection of fraud now, which is all important, of course, in terms of what we do. What detection tools and technologies are being used to combat insurance fraud in Europe, and how effective are they? I'll ask this of Romain, if I can, in France.
I think we are still at a quite early stage of this whole detection process, but it's moving on quite quickly. Because at first, once again, I come back to the role of Alpha, which is quite pivotal in all this fight against insurance fraud in France. And Alpha has created a platform, which is now also an application, in which all the fraud referrals and officers in each of the 340 members, they can share information on suspicion of fraud, for example. So that was the first seed, I would say, of the way insurers collaborated to try to share information on insurance fraud. But of course, that needs to be now also put into perspective with other tools and artificial intelligence tools. And that's very much an important subject at the moment. For example, in Les Echos, I don't know if you know Les Echos, but that is the one French economical magazine. And there was an article last Friday, 3 days ago, on AI. How does it help insurers to go after fraudster? With a very interesting of Mr. Jawish, who is the director of Shift, which was, of course, a pioneer company in terms of giving tools to insurers to go after insurance fraud. But I'm sure Ben knows that better than I do, probably.
I hope I do, yeah. I think, like Romain's pointing to, the important thing is automation. It's extremely difficult to rely upon old strategies or manually going through a file, trying to pick things out just from a human's eye. When you're looking at documents, for example, it's so easy for fraudsters to generate false documents that look realistic. So you need some sort of automated tool that can identify these documents, and they are available to insurers. But if you think of the millions of documents and emails that are processed, there's no possible way that you'd find it manually. So, automated document validation's important. Also, probably automated corporate entity screening as well. Again, there's that many entities there. You couldn't possibly do it manually, and if you've ever tried to investigate one of these complex corporate structures, it can take you a full day to go through the whole thing. And when you've got quite a few claims on your desk, it's very difficult to do. Romain pointed to Shift. Again, having tools like Shift that learn what fraud looks like from your stock of claims, that's something else that is really important, because you can't always see what's coming next, and where a system is learning what fraud looks like, it helps you to spot the next thing and be a bit more proactive instead of reactive. So that's really good. And I think the automation part is the important aspect to this.
Endri, from the Italian perspective?
Yeah, I think that Romain and Ben said everything, but just to add in some numbers from an Italian perspective, according to an article by Deloitte, by 2026, over 83% of Italian insurance companies are expected to deploy generative AI tools, which is quite an interesting number, because it shows that also in Italy there is more attention to insurance frauds. But again, I don't know if Romain and Ben agree with me on this, but I think that until we have uniform data and good quality data, the investments in tools are not enough to tackle insurance fraud. Also because especially organized gangs are investing themselves a lot of money, a lot of financial in the AI tools. So I think until we have the data, if we do not find a way to tackle insurance fraud as a unit together, I think it will be very, very hard.
Ben, any observations on that?
I think as an insurer, when you're trying to get your business case across to a decision maker to say, right, we need an automated tool, and this is the benefit it's going to bring, it's hard to do that if you don't have a broader picture of what fraud looks like. So, even from the perspective of trying to get investment, you need to understand the scale of the problem as well. So, but yeah, I think the first thing we learn when we investigate fraud is that investigation in the silos isn't as effective as collaboration with others. So, yeah, there's quite a lot to be said for that.
It's the fraudster's paradise, isn't it? Acting in silo.
Yeah.
Shall we move to the legal framework in the respective countries? So, Romain, how does the legal framework in France support or hinder the fight against insurance fraud? And what avenues do you have available to you to support you?
That's a good question, because once you have gathered the data and actually processed them and identified the fraudster, you need to know what to do about it. And there's two avenues in France to go after fraud. One is a criminal avenue. As I mentioned, it's probably quite specific to France, or relatively different than the UK, is that the insurer, they can file a complaint with a general prosecutor to bring the matter to the attention of the prosecutor. And this is something we do every week. So we put forward forged document and the fraudulent scheme. And then it is for the prosecutor to investigate, to hear the party, to hear the third party which claim benefit of the insurance, the intermediary, etc. And then it is for the general prosecutor to decide whether or not to refer the matter to a criminal court. I think in the UK you can directly put the criminal action in motion. This is not the case in France, where you have this filter of the general prosecutor.
Sorry, Romain, it's the same in Italy.
Yeah,
we have
I guess sometimes
we have to file the complaint. Yeah, we have to file the complaint, and then it's to the general prosecutor to go ahead with investigations.
And I think so. There is no specific crime for insurance fraud in France. So you have to base your argument on the general fraud qualification, or of course forgery. That's subject to 5 years of imprisonment and 325,000 euro fine. One of the difficulty we encountered is that we have not as many prosecutors as we should in France, and they handle generally everything from theft of a car to bodily injuries to fight to riots and stuff. So one of our big job as an industry is to make them aware of the importance of insurance fraud, to have them interested in these kind of matters, because otherwise we just file the complaints and sometimes it goes down the pile of things they have to do. So that's really something we should collectively work on. Just one quick word on the civil commercial aspect of things, that under French law, if you can prove fraud, of course you can deny coverage, but you can the insurer can also keep the premium even for the uncovered period after the insurance is terminated, which is a very rare case, legally speaking, of private fine under French law, because the insurer can keep the benefits of the policy even though the contract is null and void.
And Endri, in Italy, anything to add or any observations on what Romain's just said?
allow me to thank Romain because he did make also my job. So he said everything. Also with respect to Italy, as I was saying, it is very similar. Also the convictions here in Italy, we have a specific crime which is a section 624, which is for insurance fraud, and also the convictions are quite similar because here in Italy there is imprisonment from which may go from 1 to 5 years. So it is quite similar. Also the commercial venues and tools are the same. With respect to the effectiveness of these venues, I would say that the data gaps, the slow technological uptakes, and the limited legal specialization that we have in Italy makes it very difficult for our legal framework to be effective. We took part to an internal event of ANIA, which is, as I said before, the Italian Association of Insurance Companies, and they were stressing out the fact that here in Italy there are very few lawyers specialized in fraud activities, and this again shows how here in Italy there is not that much of a culture of insurance fraud like there is in the UK. But I think we are improving also in this respect, also using the example of the UK.
So over to you, Ben.
Right. It's like an exam question almost. It's yeah, there's quite a lot of avenues available in England and Wales in particular, and I think it's important because if you look at the numbers, so I think the ABI in the last report said that members identified about 80,000 cases of insurance fraud. So, and then if you think about the Metropolitan Police, they investigate 800,000 cases a year, and our prison system has a capacity of 80,000. So, if every case had to be prosecuted, it'd be a tenth of the Metropolitan Police's entire caseload, and also we'd double the prison population as well, which is quite an acute issue right at this point in time. So I think in England and Wales, it is important we utilise a lot of the things we have at our hands, so we can plead fundamental dishonesty, which means that if the fraud is proven civilly, then the entire claim goes away. You can allege contempt of court, which could lead to a prison sentence, and that's still in the civil area as such. You can bring a private prosecution for attempted fraud. You can bring a claim for tort of deceit. And then there's other aspects such as referring the case to IFED, so the City of London Police, which is specifically for insurance fraud. But then there's a capacity issue there. So I think in the last 12 years, they've probably arrested 3,000 people. So it's, I think they're good at what they do, but the scale of it isn't big enough if you were going to refer all fraudulent claims. And then on the other hand, we have the ability to deal with a fraudster in whichever way that might be, but also add them to insurance fraud register as well. So that's another way in which you can make sure that there is some form of punishment as such, and it means that it's less likely that they'll commit the fraud again. So I think unless you have quite a range of options, I think it might be quite difficult to deal with the extent of fraud that happens in each country.
Indeed, and it does feel that, you know, a huge part of bringing all of those areas into play has been collaboration in the industry.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, that's between insurers, authorities, associations. So looking at the part that everyone has to play in the role in highlighting fraud and being able to detect and tackle, what is the role that collaboration plays? I'll ask you, Ben.
Yeah. I think at a higher level, it's trying to engage with governments so that they can understand what we're faced with and how we're trying to protect our customers. It's only then that you're going to get support to bring in different legislation like that deals with fundamental dishonesty, or support to allow us to utilise things like an insurance fraud register, and then bringing in other legislation like the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, which I think has been really beneficial to England and Wales, given that our company's register was unvalidated. So it kind of gave fraudsters some sort of legitimacy when presenting whatever it might be, a claim or something. And things like that have only come in with that collaboration with government. And then the other side of it is, if you look at organisations like the IFB, it's trying to encourage more people to collaborate in their strategies to understand what the current trends look like, so people can focus their efforts and sharing the data, because a lot of these claims that are organised, we're not going to be able to identify the organised nature of them unless we're finding out from other people that they're also exposed to it. So, it's really important, and probably can't emphasise it enough, to be honest.
And Endri, your view in Italy on the collaboration in the industry?
Yeah, quite recently, IVAS has been pushing insurance companies in this direction. Also, Anya has multiple times highlighted how important it is that insurance companies cooperate between each other. And in Italy, once again, there is also a cultural aspect that we have to deal with, because what we have seen from our experience is that some insurance company are quite reluctant with sharing their datas, because they are afraid that these datas may show their vulnerabilities, or even worse, may benefit competitors. So I think that when discussing insurance fraud, we must abandon this, let me say, individualistic view. We have to cooperate to solve this problem, which is affecting, in fact, all the insurance companies, and now all the lines of business. Because in Italy, until, let's say, 10 years ago, it was mainly an issue for insurance companies dealing with the motor sector, while now it is an issue. It is an issue for all insurance companies, for all the lines of business. So personal injury, medical malpractice, property, hull, marine. So I think the need of cooperation is essential.
I think if I can jump onto that as well, the other aspect as well is where something will change in one country, and fraudsters will jurisdiction shop and see which area will help them. So, as I mentioned, the corporate transparency legislation that came in, that's meaning that it's a lot harder for criminals to set up a fake company in the UK now. So they're now going to be looking at other countries that are potentially a bit softer, maybe, and so they can establish that enterprise. So, it might be Spain, Italy, or somewhere like that. So unless we actually collaborate and work together on these particular areas, then it's going to be a forever circle of trying to block the gaps where legislation hasn't covered everything off in each country.
And bringing Romain in on France collaboration and its importance.
So how the expression go? It needs a network to fight a network. So I think indeed collaboration is very important. It's a market-wide issue, so it has to be fought on a market-wide basis. And indeed, every association has its role to play. In France, that would be, of course, as I mentioned it, I hope you understood it by now, the Alpha, which is really specifically devoted to fighting insurance frauds. But the message has also to be relayed by the French Association of Insurers, which really gather all big corporate insurance companies. So to make sure that in each of these entities, there is somebody in charge actually responsible for handling the fight against fraud. That would also be the ACPR, the regulatory body for insurance companies in France, in particular in relation to intermediary frauds, because this should also have, a regulatory sanction and withdrawal of authorization and this kind of thing. So on a national level, I think it's very important that all these organizations, they work together to warn their members on the issue, to train them, which is a huge role of Alpha. I think you have two trainings a week on how to find a forged document, how to use AI to fight fraud, etc., and also to make sure there are sanctions. So that's I would say on the national level, and of course international cooperation is extremely important, as this actually is clear from our discussion today. Because when you see that in one country you have a specific criminal qualification for insurance fraud, like Italy, which is not the case in France, and the rule on GDPR are more permissive, I would say, in France for authorizing insurers to use data than in Italy, and that the data are so different in the UK than they are in France. So I think there is a huge need for this international cooperation, so that we use same standards, rule, and tools to go after the phenomenon.
And I do like that phrase. It takes a network to fight a network. I'm going to have to remember that one in the future. Let's turn to culture. So how do cultural factors influence the prevalence and perception of insurance fraud in your country? Let's go to Endri on this one first.
Yeah, I think I mentioned cultural aspect many times during this podcast. Someone might get offended, but the results show that fraud is encouraged, at least in Italy, by certain deeply rooted beliefs among citizens. And for example, failing to insure a vehicle, I will say that is socially accepted, if not normal, in certain areas of Italy. To give you some numbers, some data with respect, we have around 2.8 million vehicles which are circulating in Italy, not insured. So in Italy, the average premium is around 500, 600 euros per year. So I will let the audience do the math so we can understand how of a damage this is for insurance companies. And this is also with respect to this specific area. But what is the basis for this cultural aspect? I think that insurance companies are usually perceived as a sort of powerful and rich entities from which, let's say, there is a right to attempt to steal. So in fact, there is not a real social condemnation. There is no insurance literacy, for example, in Italy. So I think until we develop an insurance knowledge across the public, the general public, the public opinion, it will be very, very difficult to lower the numbers that we are currently facing.
And Romain, in France?
I would say that in France, it's really a matter of visibility of the issue. Because we talk about tax evasion, social fraud, etc., and insurance fraud would definitely be at the bottom of this list in terms of concerns. And I think the average insured does not measure indeed the effect that insurance fraud has on its own premium and its own situation, and that actually is a good insured. Some pay off for the bad ones. So that's one of the issue I would put forward. The other one is really the one I mentioned before in terms of the need to really put the matter forward to make sure there is an understanding by the one who are actually empowered to prosecute these claims. Meaning what we would need is actually a document from the Ministry of Justice to the General Prosecutor to say, one page, please have this issue in mind. It is small cases. There are small cases, but in the end, it's a huge issue. So I think that's what we should be doing.
And Ben, for years, we've heard, fraud is a victimless crime. And as an industry, we work very hard to really raise the perception of fraud and the fact that it isn't. So what's your views on the cultural factors here?
I think there's a few cultural factors, not only jurisdiction, but also lines of business. I think that if you look at specialist lines of business, they don't have the same awareness or understanding of insurance fraud that maybe more sort of property casualty motor lines do, because it's been at least sort of 15, 20 years that insurers have been working together in those lines of business and maybe less so in the specialist lines. So I think that means that there's a lot less detection and awareness. From a jurisdiction perspective, when I look at what's happening in different countries across Europe, there is a marked difference in how we publicise issues about insurance fraud, whether it's cases that have been through the courts or whether it is publicity around the impacts, or going to Endri's point, unless you're actually relating insurance fraud back to the customer to say what the impact is on them, I don't think you get the real sort of deterrent effect. If you look at recent reports like from Russia, where they explained that vehicle theft is more and more organised than opportunistic. And if you think that in the UK, I think last year vehicle thefts cost us about 1.5 billion. That's quite a significant impact on the customer. And I believe, I don't know if Romain can correct me, but I think France is potentially, I think they might be have a greater issue with vehicle theft than we do in the UK as well. So,
It's the same for Italy. Right?
Yeah,
Facing unbelievable issues with vehicles sold in Eastern Europe, also Russia, Romania, Bulgaria. So countries where also public prosecutors have little, if not zero, access. So this is an international issue, I would say.
and they're all facilitated by supply chains across Europe. The vehicles, whether it's plant machinery from construction sites, whether it's a ute, a Toyota Hilux or something like that, they're taken from the UK's perspective, they're transported across to France or Netherlands, and then straight through to Africa or to the Ukraine or Gaza or somewhere like that. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to collaborate and to identify these areas. But without that, penetrating that cultural challenge, I don't think that people would sort of perhaps report people who are associated to these gangs to the police or to the insurance authorities. So yeah, it makes it a lot more difficult to break down these gangs and that sort of thing. Yeah,
and that leads neatly on to our final area of discussion today, which is around improvements or changes that you'd all like to see in the different jurisdictions to strengthen the fight against insurance fraud. So, Romain, should we go to you first in France?
Yes, thank you, Lorraine. So, all this thing is relatively new in France. Once again, the Alpha was created 25 years ago. And for example, in a couple of the weeks from now, there will be the 14th National Day for fight against insurance. So I think we are learning, we are improving. What we would need is not that much of a legislative change, but rather a better coordination. As we mentioned it better earlier, so to make sure that all the actors and victims of the fraud act together in the same direction, be they consumer association, once again, association of insurers, brokers, and at a national and international level, and just to repeat it, to make sure that the one who have the power to go after it, that the general prosecutor are mindful of the problem.
And Endri from Italy.
Well, from Italy's perspective, of course, coordination and cooperation, as we discussed before, is quite essential to fight fraud activities. But with respect to Italy, I think that two further actions will be required. One involves cultural engagement with the public opinion, while the other concerns the fight against organized crimes. And also this is something that quite concerns me. With respect to the first one, I think that it is essential in Italy to promote a sort of insurance literacy across all the country. And let me say, not just the public, the general public, but also brokers, intermediaries, and also insurance companies that should start to treat insurance fraud as it really is, as it is in fact. So it's one of the most relevant issues that we are facing on a daily basis. And the other one, as I said, concerns the fight against organized crime, because as Ben was saying before, this is not fraud. Is now an issue that involves international gang organized crimes. So we need to step up on this. The level needs to be, the level of attention needs to be much higher. We need to invest in artificial intelligence. We need to invest in cooperation. We need to invest in gathering the data, but we must do it as a unit, not country per country.
Thank you. And over to you, Ben, final word.
I feel like I'm going to repeat the other two, parrot fashion. I don't disagree at all. Collaboration is the fundamental aspect, whether it's in relation to gathering data, trend analysis, collaboration on criminal networks. I think that's the primary key to better detection and improvement in what's happening. And then the publicity around what fraud looks like and the impact on society in each country. I think it's so important. And I think I said earlier, it's kind of a catch-22. You need to get the data to show the impact, but you can't actually get the data because there isn't the priority behind that strategy as such. So it's a combination of things. It's complex as most things are, but I think collaboration on all of the above is extremely important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Remains to be said, thank you all very much for listening. We hope you found this very insightful. Thank you specifically to our guests, to Ben, to Romain, and to Endri for joining us and giving us such an insight into the different jurisdictions. We do hope you will join us again for the next episode in the Risk Matters series.
Thank you for listening to Risk Matters, the DWF Insurance podcast. We hope you join us again soon for future podcasts in our series.